Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Hello and welcome. Federal Ministry of Health confirms first case of coronavirus in Nigeria, asks Nigerians to step up hygiene level and prevent spread of COVID-19. Lagos State government pledges adequate preparedness to prevent spread of disease as it begins contact tracing of potential suspected cases. Ogun State governor announces shutdown of company where first case of coronavirus worked, says 28 persons who made contact with him have been identified. And World Health Organization upgrades coronavirus risk to highest level and says containment of disease still possible. Plus you'll see business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later international news from our London studios.
And on business news tonight, Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves dropped to $36.33 billion amid falling oil prices as central bank maintained support for the naira through its weekly dollar interventions.
In sports news tonight, Nigeria table tennis players secure 3 Olympic tickets in one day as Olufoke Oshonaike, Ofyong Edem and Omotayo Olajide booked their spots for Tokyo 2020.
And from Abuja, National Human Rights Commission asks government to address challenges hindering participation of women in political and electoral processes.
It's been a day which Nigeria confirmed its first case of the novel coronavirus by a yet-to-be-named Italian national identified in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. While the Federal Ministry of Health has been explaining how the victim entered the country, the Lagos State government has been offering assurances that the virus will be contained. Earlier today, there was an update from the Lagos State government on the present state of the patient, while the path the Italian took after his arrival into Nigeria has been traced all the way to neighboring Ogun State. The governor of the state has confirmed that 28 contact cases have been identified, while the company the victim visited while in Ogun State has been shut down. Let's begin with the Federal Ministry of Health confirming the first case of the novel coronavirus disease, COVID-19, in Lagos, Nigeria. The victim, an Italian who arrived Nigeria through the Lagos airport on Tuesday from Milan, is currently being managed at the Infectious Diseases Hospital in Yaba, Lagos. He was tested positive by the virology laboratory of the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, part of the laboratory network of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC. The Federal Ministry of Health and the Lagos State Ministry of Health says the patient, whose name has not been made public, is clinically stable and with no serious symptoms. According to the federal government, the Ministry of Health has activated its national emergency operations centers and will work closely with the Lagos State health authorities to respond to this first case and contain its spread. Meanwhile, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, has explained how the coronavirus found its way into the country and the efforts being put in place to contain its spread. Dr. Hanire was speaking at a press conference in Abuja where he says the victim did not exhibit any symptom of the virus at the time of entry into the country. He's also assuring of the activation of emergency operations at all the 4 international airports in the country. Our correspondent Kayla Megwa reports.
It is an Italian citizen who works in Nigeria and returned from Milan, Italy to Lagos, Nigeria on the 25th of February 2020. He actually landed here in the evening of the 24th, but by the time he got into his residence, Lagos, already 25th. The government of Nigeria, through the Federal Ministry of Health, has been strengthening measures to ensure an outbreak in Nigeria is controlled and contained quickly. The multi-sectoral coronavirus preparedness group, led by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, has immediately activated its National Emergency Operations Center and will work closely with Lagos State Health Authorities, or let us say is already working closely with Lagos State Health Authorities to respond to this case and implement firm control measures. The World Health Organization warned just the day before, I saw on the news, that all countries should brace themselves for possible entry of spread of coronavirus into their own states. And since then, we have continued beefing up our own security. The second thing that he said is that the coronavirus symptoms may not manifest within the first several days. So a person who gets infected may not show any signs at all within the first few days, like 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then the symptoms begin. So if that person has traveled within that window, he can get through anywhere and not be noticed. And the first line of defense there is the Port Health Services. The Port Health Services will be working with the airline to get the passenger manifest and find out where exactly this gentleman was, and also where he sat, and also those who sat around him, and set up a monitoring system for all the passengers and the crew members of that particular flight in order to be able to get information to monitor their state of health within the next 14 days. So the question of quarantine, the World Health Organization advises everybody, all countries, that there is no need to put every single traveler into quarantine. There are some other countries who choose to do differently. But we follow the guidelines of the World Health Organization, which says that screen all persons who are entering your country, take their travel history. If they are coming from a country that has a high burden of coronavirus, invite them for further questioning, take the details, give them a phone number to call, you take their own phone number, and advise them in the interest of their own family and friends to stay in self-isolation for 14 days and report any symptoms immediately.
The Minister of Health there on the federal government's preparedness. But in Lagos State, where the first case has been identified, residents are being assured that the COVID-19 virus will be contained as health officials are on standby to fight the global scourge. The state governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, offered the assurance at a press briefing where he spoke about the condition of the Italian who has been quarantined.
At about 10 p.m., I received a call from my colleague, the Honorable Commissioner, and were triggered all our various levels of biosecurity and containment. We're up till early hours of this morning contacting both the federal authority, including Mr. President, and everybody that needs to be aware, including the facility that this patient had contact with. The chairman of the company and everybody in the company, they've been very supportive. They had proactively also curtailed their own staff. So like the commissioner said, we had gone out. People are out there now trying to track every of suspected interaction that this patient might have had contact with, and we're ready. Our facility has been fortified to continue, if need be, of any form of tests and containment, if need be. For us here in Lagos, everything that needs to be done, we're doing, and we'll continue to have dialogue, and support, if required, from the Federal Ministry of Health. But we're assured that, like the professionals have said, that this patient is stable, and every health intervention that is required is currently being given, and we can say that we're ready, and we're just hoping that we can very quickly put this behind us.
Also, the State Commissioner of Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, traces the path of the patient and the level of preparation by the state government.
He spent the night in a hotel near the airport, and on Tuesday morning, he moved on to his business in Ogun State, where he's engaged by a corporate entity. He carried out business in Ogun State within the confines of that company on Tuesday and on early part of Wednesday. In that company, he spent the night in their accommodation, which is a confined environment, guest house. By the afternoon, he started to develop symptoms of high fever and body pains. He presented to the company medical facility where the investigation began. Because he gave a history of his origin from Italy, where we know there is a young outbreak happening, it was very astute of the medical practitioners in that facility to keep him overnight in an isolated environment. He was brought to our high containment facility in Yaba on Thursday morning. Immediately he arrived, he was put into strict isolation and the appropriate tests were ordered. Within hours, we received the signal that the test in the laboratory was showing signs of positivity. In Lagos, we have been building capacity steadily. We've fortified support at the airport. At our infectious disease facility, we have ramped up our capacity to isolate suspected cases. We are now sitting on about an 80-bed isolation facility. We are continuing to build more capacity should in case we have an increased number of cases in Lagos.
And it appears the tracing and tracking of the 44-year-old Italian has yielded results. The Ogun State Governor, Dr. Abiodun, has confirmed that 28 contacts with the victim in the state have been identified. He adds that the company which the patient is believed to have visited in the state has been shut down, while 2 isolation centers have been established for the identified contacts. Governor Abiodun, who was briefing journalists in his office in Abeokuta, says surveillance centers have been reactivated in all the 20 local government areas of the state and the Olabisi Onabanjo Teaching Hospital.
On our part in the state, we are not leaving any stone unturned. We have distributed a lot of items all the way to our local government and ward primary health care centers. We've given out gloves, we've given out masks, we've given out protective equipment and protective gear. We've stepped up the advocacy, we've given out literature so that people understand this virus for what it is and how to identify the symptoms when people come in. As a matter of fact, I am aware that we are presently sharing a particular app to our primary healthcare workers that will allow them to use and identify likely suspects of this virus. And the protocol is that once there is a suspicion that someone might likely be infected, if the person presents the symptoms, which is the temperature and body aches, they might not necessarily have started coughing, they would immediately isolate that person. They would take this sputum sample, not the blood sample, and this sputum sample will be sent to the biosecurity center in Lagos.
In part 2, after the break, we'll have more on coronavirus in Nigeria as federal government partners social network Facebook in checking fake news on COVID-19. Please join us again.